you describe your art to someone who is curious but completely unfamiliar with it?
I usually describe it as work that has some representational elements, some interest in narrative, and that uses a lot of diverse sources from a lot of different time periods and you know, from high culture and popular culture and various kinds of things. But it's meant to also have a fairly experiential and sort of visceral kind of quality. That is, I want it to be experienced as much as thought about. So for someone who's curious, it would be, I think, kind of an interesting thing because it sort of presupposes a certain curiosity when you look at it, where you have to go, okay, where does this element come from, and what does this one have to do with this one, and why would they be put together?
The piece that's in the OAG's show coming up, maybe you can tell us just about that piece.
That particular piece is called Pour retrouver le chemin, and it's a piece that is based on a particular fairy tale. The story Le Petit Poucet, which is in the first collection of Charles Perrault folk tales published in 1695, which included things like Puss in Boots and, you know, the sort of standard folk tales and fairy tales that have come down through that history. And I was doing a lot of research in those things back for quite a while, looking at early illustrations and doing research in the illustrations and archival research and stuff like that. The most recent works have dealt with the kinds of stories that have these sort of tropes, common tropes, like the children abandoned in the wood that you find in that story, or you find in Hansel and Gretel, or you find in a number of stories where there's this sort of, you know, in a time of sort of scarcity, the family abandons the children in the woods because they can't feed them, and then they cleverly find their way out, or they find their way to the ogre's house or the witch's house or the, you know, whatever. But those tropes were commonly used. The illustrations for them would often be reused and mixed up, and so there was a really interesting kind of history of that, and I was interested in those stories for partly for their resonance for today in a lot of various contexts, both in terms of, if I were to say in terms of climate change, that narrows it way too much in terms of what I'm thinking about, but the sort of sense of, it's broader than that in terms of the sense of kind of abandonment of a kind of debt to the future or concern for the future on a lot of levels, not just sort of, you know, in terms of the climate or something like that, but the sense that we're sort of kind of abandoning future generations on a lot of levels.
What was the art scene like in Ottawa when you first got here, and has it changed?
Probably when I was first living here, I was mostly connected to the university because I was teaching. So, you know, and actually Ottawa U was a very interesting place at that point. It was really very lively, a lot of interesting things going on there. A lot of people who went on to have, you know, fairly significant careers were studying at Ottawa U at that time in the late 80s, and there were, you know, a lot of people teaching there. People like Thierry Dedeuve, who's, you know, no longer in Canada. It's hard to say. I mean, it has changed. And Ottawa is, it's an unusual art scene in the sense that it has a local, you know, scene, and then the sort of national thing layered on top of it. So there's always this sort of slightly dual presence and stuff. So it's interesting that way. I mean, both the sort of local scene and the sort of national kind of scene together.